Hi, it's Matt here from the Retro Odyssey podcast. I just wanted to give a quick note before the episode started that due to some issues with my microphone, there are some audio issues in this episode. Basically, my microphone recorded a lot lower than everyone else's, so I had to use a lot of compression to get everyone's voices back to the same level, which has increased the general noise volume in certain parts of the recording. Hopefully it won't impact your enjoyment that much. It's not a major issue, but you can probably hear it if you're on headphones. So my apologies about that, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Guys, boss is coming. Look busy.
Fuck. Matt, turn that off.
We've got the latest numbers, and they're not good. Modern games just aren't resonating well with our audience. Unless it's Fortnite, the Americans don't even care. We need to appeal to a different country.
Well, what about England?
Japan, boys! That's where the big bucks are, where the yen is to be found. Did you know their population is 4 times the size of America?
I think that's China.
I've got you 4 tickets to Japan. You leave tonight. Go get 'em, lads!
So, our plucky band of retrobates are en route to Japan on the cheapest airline the boss could find. Will they be able to uncover some of the games that Japan would rather keep hidden from the West? Or will they die from too much sushi? Let's find out.
Hello everybody and welcome to version 2.0 of the Retro Odyssey podcast. We've had a new title update and that's overhauled the whole podcast with some new features, and we've got a completely new user agreement as well that hopefully none of you'll read. So I am your host as always, and I'm joined with my waifus Stephen, Ryan and Matt. Hi everyone.
Hello.
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 How are you all doing?
I am awake. That's about all that can be said.
I think this is the earliest I've ever been up on my day off, so...
Like almost 4:30 here. What are you talking about?
It's before 10 here, so...
Yeah, fair enough. Time zones and all that.
And I work nights, so I haven't had a lot of sleep today.
Fair enough. What are you, Matt? How are you doing?
Not too bad. I've started a new work schedule as well, so I start early in the mornings and I've basically got the rest of the day free after like midday or so. So yeah, it's good.
Nice.
Fun. I'm coming up to the final month in my work before the summer holidays, which is always a hectic time with end of school year and all that lot. So I'm having a great time. It's not tiring at all.
You lie.
Right, anyway, one thing that we're going to do a little bit differently to normal as part of this new version of the podcast is we're going to have like a chat about just stuff we've been doing recently. Not necessarily retro-related stuff. It can be to do with modern gaming or just anything gaming related we've done. I believe, like, Matt, you said you've got like a new control stick. Is it the wireless Mega Drive one or something?
No, it's not. It's the retrobit ones. They are actually wired. I actually have 2 of them. I have a Saturn one and a Mega Drive 6-button one. And they're designed so that they look pretty much exactly like the originals. I've tested out the Saturn one quite a bit. I've been playing one of the games that we've been covering for this episode. I've been playing a lot with that. And it feels exactly like the original.
Does it have extra buttons to cover like things like double triggers and things like that, which may exist in... So it's literally just button to button.
Yeah, it is basically exactly the same. Obviously, you can't buy those controllers new anymore.
Yeah.
So it's good to have, and they've got 10-foot cables as well.
Oh, nice.
Which is really, really nice. I've not had a chance to check out the Mega Drive one yet because I only got that 2 days ago. But I needed a 6-button Mega Drive pad. And I decided, might as well get that one.
Are they USB ones?
No, they are for the original consoles.
Console. Oh, right, okay. All right, cool. So they're literally just new editions of the old controllers.
Yeah, basically the only difference is it's got a little retro bit sticker on the back.
And a longer cable.
Yeah.
All right, that's pretty cool. Because like sometimes with, especially with the Mega Drive controllers, the cable's quite short. So having that extra length would probably help.
My consoles are basically on a unit in the corner of my room. So often when I need to play a particular console, I've got to take it off that unit and put it onto the table in front of me. Whereas with this, I can just keep it where it is. And like I said, 10-foot cable, so it's ideal.
Nice. It's a shame it hasn't got like a little adapter or something that you can use to plug into your PC and make it USB. Because that'd be additional functionality.
But I believe 8BitDo have done controllers exactly like that for the Saturn and Mega Drive recently.
Oh, they don't have one for the Saturn. They have a 6-button Genesis controller. It looks a lot like a Saturn controller. It feels absolutely amazing, and it's all Bluetooth. So if you get a USB receiver, it comes with a Genesis receiver. It can go to any of their Bluetooth receivers. It's kind of great. It feels super tight.
It does look a bit like a weird hybrid between the 6-button Mega Drive controller and the Saturn version. It looks like it's all right. I'm not entirely sure about the button layout, to be honest. I think after having used my NES 8BitDo, I kind of like the 4 buttons in that square shape, and I'm kind of used to using that for my Switch games at least.
That's when I'm playing this. It's weird that they picked a Genesis, or not Genesis, picked up the Saturn layout, because it feels like they're going to make a Saturn adapter and then give it a firmware update where you can go to Saturn mode. Because it has shoulder buttons too.
Yeah, well, no, the thing is with the 8BitDo ones, they have the extra buttons, so you do have the functionality. Obviously they're missing analog sticks, which, obviously is going to be more of an issue, but like, for example, the SNES one, they've got 2 analog sticks jumped on the bottom, and you've got the 2 sets of triggers. So you do have those additional buttons in order to use them with modern games, which it seems like this one doesn't have.
It does not have.
I can imagine that proves to be a bit more of an issue. Obviously you've got 6 buttons on the front instead of the 4, so that would make up for...
Well, that's the thing, is it also has 2 bumpers.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying it feels like they made this...
So they do have like 2 bumpers on each side?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying this is a Saturn controller as well. It just doesn't have any Saturn firmware.
Okay, in that case, I suppose, when you click in the sticks and that counts as an extra button, those would make up the additional 2 face buttons. So you're only missing the analog sticks, I suppose.
Yep.
Yeah, which I suppose depends on the game you're playing. It seems like a neat thing, but...
It's also insanely comfortable.
Yeah, if it's a hybrid between the Saturn and the Mega Drive one, the Saturn controller's fantastic, as, you already know. So what about anything else? Obviously you've been using your controller, Matt. What games have you been playing? Just the ones for the podcast or anything else?
So far, just one of the ones for the podcast at the minute, which I won't spoil and say what it is. I've played probably about a dozen playthroughs of this game we're going to be talking about.
Wow.
And that's all that I've really played with it, to be honest. And like I said, I've not tested out the Mega Drive one yet. I've heard people say that the D-pad feels a little bit stiffer. I've held it in my hands and it seems fine to me. But I'll see when I actually get around to playing it.
The Mega Drive D-pads are a little loose, in my opinion. Not as bad as the Master System one, which sloshes about like water.
Yeah.
But the Mega Drive D-pad is kind of a bit loose anyway, so having it tighter might not necessarily be that bad. So maybe it was more for, design reasons, and they thought that would work better. I don't know. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see next month how the Mega Drive one is.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give it a try before next month.
Yeah, presumably it'll be top quality like the Saturn one. What about any new games? Have you been playing any modern type games as well?
Pretty much just Final Fantasy 14, to be honest. I've just been mainlining that for the past 9 months.
So it's a bit of a long-term project.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I cancelled
JRPG.
my WoW subscription, and I've just been like fully on that.
Wow.
I really need to put some more time into that before the expansion comes out.
Yeah, the expansion's out in a month.
Yeah.
So what's the average completion time then of Final Fantasy 14?
It's
that
an
long?
MMO, so it's so
okay.
it's just an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
Ah, right, okay, so it's not a campaign. Fair enough. What about you guys on the other side of the pond?
I haven't played many old games recently, but I did pick up Yoshi's Crafted World, and it is just disgustingly cute.
Is it fun though? Because I played the demo, and even though it looks nice, it kind of seemed a bit bland to me. It was like it just goes through the motions and never.
I mean, it's not a super complicated game. It just looks really, really nice. It's kind of a nice casual romp.
Yeah.
Like, even, like, okay, so in Yoshi's Woolly World, the game actually started to get a bit difficult in normal mode. Like, just some of the platforming and trying to, like, if you were just trying to get to the level, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
But if you're actually trying to collect all the things, like, the game could get legitimately difficult.
Yeah.
And then you had, like, casual mode where you had the Super Dragon wings and you wouldn't fall down pits. And it took a lot of pressure off of those areas. Like, I'm not super far into Crafted World, but normal mode might be as easy as casual mode was.
Really?
It is very easy. Like, you can still die due to pitfalls, but even when you die, they just go, whoop, you're back.
There's no, like, kind of penalties or anything for...
I mean, the penalties for fucking up is one of the things to get a 100% on a level is to have max health. And they put in just enough health so you can maybe take one hit. Like, they have enough little Heartmans that jump around that you can pick up for health. They have just enough to max out your meter and maybe take one hit. And that's it.
Yeah.
So if we're going for 100%, you have to, proceed with caution.
Yeah, but not that much.
But not that much. But, like, bosses are fun. The environments are honestly fantastic to look at because it's all crafted stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen quite a lot of videos of it. It's gorgeous to look at.
Yeah. I mean, I think it looks pretty, but...
I was going to say, I would maybe suggest I got it cheaper off of Amazon. They had it for $10 off, so I figured, hey, why not?
Yeah.
I might wait for a sale. You can pick it up for like 30 or 40.
Yeah. I think it'd be one point where maybe in the future, and I'm starting to, delve into games I might not necessarily have wanted to play immediately,
right.
And it's cheaper. Yeah, maybe then. Otherwise, I think I'm not that bothered by it. I wasn't impressed with the demo that much. I didn't dislike it. It just kind of felt like it was just a bit simple and kind of generic.
The gimmick of being able to shoot into the foreign background is just kind of neat, but it's not like super groundbreaking.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they have the foreground and background stuff, but it doesn't really seem like it's done for anything. It's not like a neat gimmick where there's some interesting puzzles. It's just there.
I mean, well, there's like some stuff where you have to put together a train in the first level.
Yeah.
And you have to go and zap I think you have to zap one of the items, and then you have to shoot a Shy Guy who's holding another one, and then you get it that way.
Yeah. I think that was in the demo.
Yeah, but there's not any, like, convoluted puzzles.
Yeah. I mean, it might be all right. I'm glad you're still enjoying it, but I'm not sure if it's for me or not. I haven't been won over by it. What about you, Steve? What have you been playing recently?
Basically, all I've been playing is Final Fantasy VII on Switch and Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix.
Any good?
Oh, yeah. I give Final Fantasy VII a lot of grief because, people talk about how it's the greatest game of all time, and I don't think that it is.
Yeah.
But it's still a very, very good game. Like, I'm not going to say it's a bad game by any stretch. Kingdom Hearts 2 is one that I will defend from everybody because it is my favorite Kingdom Hearts game and one of my favorite games ever.
But Final Fantasy VII, you wouldn't defend it so much.
No, because there are legitimate criticisms to be had. What they did with that at the time they were doing it was impressive.
Yeah. I
mean, I know you kind of like look at footage of it today and it's like, why does everyone have hammer hands?
And that's like, they didn't have much option. But like the themes and stuff, like, they were talking about, climate change as an issue in the 90s, which, I mean, it's still not being addressed today. So, I guess we haven't learned anything. But
Japan's been pretty on top of that sort of stuff for, the past 70 years.
Yeah.
Whereas you've got people like Donald Trump's, denying it even exists.
Well, that's a lot of America.
Shit. Even Mitch McConnell and his weird turtleneck has admitted that it existed, and that mankind is influencing it and accelerating it. Like, he apparently came around and finally admitted it.
Yeah.
But I guess that's why they're remaking it, because, no one paid attention 20 years ago. Now it's critical point. We'd better remake Final Fantasy VII and just remind people that the climate is kind of like a decline.
We need to remake Final Fantasy VII, or the environment's going to get destroyed. Right. This is the only thing we can do.
I have feelings about the remake.
Final Fantasy saved Square Enix back in the 80s, and now it's going to save the world in 2020.
Yeah. As for me, I've been playing Battle Princess Madeline. I managed to get back into it and finish it off. I stopped because it was kind of unplayable, ages ago, because it was so obtuse and you didn't know where you were going, and it was a bit of a mess. And then they did a massive overhaul, and they added things like waypoints, a quest guide, a map, heaven forbid. And now it's a lot of fun. Before, when you had no idea where you were even heading, it was a frustration. But now the patch has finally been released. I've got to the end of it and I've had a good time. It's sort of like a spiritual successor to Ghouls and Ghosts. So if you enjoy those games, it's sort of like that, but nowhere near as difficult. It's a neat little game. I'd probably say it's not worth the price it goes for, but if you see it on a sale 15, 20% off, I'd say it's definitely worthwhile.
That's the one that we did a giveaway for a few months back, isn't it?
Yeah, and at that point, I think they hadn't released the Switch update, because I had it on the Switch, and then I had the codes for the PC version, so obviously those were extra, and I gave those away. But yeah, it's still a pretty decent game, so I'd say that if you like Ghouls and Ghosts, it's, obviously there's nothing really similar these days apart from Battle Princess Madeline, and it is a pretty solid game and a pretty decent game. It's a little rough around the edges in some place, but it's still a good time. I've also jumped into, and I'm only really near the start of it, I've been playing Ultra Sun as well, Pokemon Ultra Sun.
Getting ready for that Sword and Shield?
Well, yeah. I've not actually played Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so I thought jump in, because Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is basically like you remember how they used to do the third editions, like Yellow and Crystal and Platinum and all that lot?
Mm-hmm.
Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is basically that version where things are just fixed and they've added more stuff. Apart from they released 2 different versions, so instead of having 2 and the updated version, there's 2 and 2 updated versions for fucking reasons.
Well, it's like as far as I can tell, it's like black and white, because in black and white you had was it Kiram and Reshiram?
Yeah,
as legendary, and then they did Black 2 and White 2, and
Black and White 2 are sequels. This isn't a sequel; it's the same game. It's just more stuff, and they fix some stuff.
But so, what he's saying is with the legendaries, where you had the mascot legendaries, and then they fused with the third legendary, and then you see the same thing with Sun and Moon.
Yeah, they repeated that concept.
Okay. I've not got to the end of it. I've just done the fire trials, so I'm not that far ahead.
Yeah, they threw in the third legendary, and they do a weird fusion thing.
Right, okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I thought you meant they're like a sequel, like Black and White 2.
No,
okay.
Not quite.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. There's a lot of problems with the game, like some of the mechanics, like the SOS stuff is a pain in the ass, and like the trials aren't necessarily the best, and there are just cutscenes every 2 fucking seconds, and it's like, Jesus Christ, let me go on with it. And it's like, here's how the festival plaza works. Let me waste your time for 5 minutes just doing pointless shit before you can continue with the game. Like, bugger off, mate. But, it's still a good game. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, and I'm enjoying it more than X and Y. But it does have some problems.
How dare you? X and Y was great.
Well, I mean, it's enjoyable. It never really did anything special, did X and Y. It just it was just, I suppose, a solid game from start to finish, but there was no standout moments, in my opinion. and the difficulty was just kind of there.
I don't know. I think what I liked most about X and Y was just how insane the main villain is. Because we've had some extreme villains before, but this dude, I can't remember his name.
The fashion guy.
Yeah, he was just like, what are we going to do here? Well, with Yveltal, because I had Y, he's like, oh, we're going to just reset the universe. Like, whoa, buddy.
Hold your fucking shit.
Like, you just went straight to 15. You skipped 11. You just turned it all the way around. You rolled it.
Yeah. I mean, X and Y does have some good things. Like I say, the villain was nuts, and, the new Pokemon were really good, and the multiplayer was pretty good. But just like the standard stuff, like with the gyms and the cities and stuff, I kind of felt like none of those were really anything special. But yeah, I mean, I say Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. I'm enjoying it so far, more than stuff like X and Y, and definitely more than, Generation 3. But not as good as some of the other generations. Right. So I think that's enough for the pleasantries. Now we're going to move on to something new, one of our new segments. Before we delve into the actual main topic, I think it's time we cover some of the latest news in retro gaming over the last month. So now this is our first proper news segment, which is the news segment, where we talk about the latest in retro gaming news that's happened over the last month or so. So for me, I think one of the biggest pieces of news to come out this month is John Romero's 5th episode of Doom, which is Sigil, I think the name is. It's finally going to get a release at the end of this month on the 31st. So probably by the time you're listening to this, it'll have been released. It's been in the works for like ages, and, obviously because it's John Romero, it's been delayed to fuck due to various reasons. I think he wanted to delay it until the physical version was ready to go. But yeah, so we're finally getting a 5th episode of the original Doom. It's going to be a proper Doom mod and everything, so it's going to attach to the original. I imagine you're pretty excited for it as well, Matt?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. As you know, Doom is one of my favourite games of all time. And
you don't say.
It's really, really, really nice to see, new stuff coming out for it now.
Especially, official stuff. I mean, I suppose it's not official, but it's John Romero, so it might as well be official.
Yeah, as official as it's going to get for that particular game engine at this point.
Yeah, so we'll see how that is. I imagine that we're going to talk about it next month after, we've had a chance of playing it. I mean, I'll definitely play it, and obviously you will, Matt. It's free, so why the hell not? Let's just hope it's as good as episode 4 of Doom, which, was another additional one they end up doing, and that's actually my favourite episode of Doom.
Not exactly sure when it's going to come out for download, because it has shipped. The physical product is shipped. Yeah,
the physical one is shipped, and the download one is going to be on the 31st, so end of the month.
31st is that.
So not too long to wait. On another piece of news, we've also been getting more information on the Mega Drive Mini. Ryan, have you got the list of games you said?
I do.
I think there are 30 that have been released at the moment. So do you want to put down as what we've got at the moment and see if it looks good or whether it sounds shit?
Yeah, we have 30 of the 40. We got Echo the Dolphin, Castlevania Bloodlines, Space Harrier 2, Shining Force, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, if you're into those puzzles and whatnot, Toe Jam and Earl, Comics Zone, Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2, Altered Beast, Gunstar Heroes, Mickey Mouse Castle of Illusion, and Mickey Mouse World of Illusion. And that was in the era where Disney games were usually pretty fucking awesome. Thunder Force 3. Wow, I can't actually read that. Fantasy Zone. Super Fantasy Zone. There we go. Has a pumpkin on it. That is very difficult to read with all those colors. Shinobi 3. Streets of Rage 2. Earthworm Jim. Contra Hardcores. Landstalker. Beyond Oasis, which I've heard is a great game.
Yeah, I've got the Saturn sequel. It's really good. It's basically like Zelda, but with Aladdin.
Mm-hmm. Ghouls and Ghosts, Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle, Golden Axe, Phantasy Star 4, Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition, which I have a comment about that in a second, Mega Man The Wily Wars, which is kind of a big deal because as just Mega Man has, that game happened and sort of disappeared, and it's really just a compilation of Mega Man 1 through 3. I think you own a copy of it, don't you, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like a remake of Mega Man 1, 2, 3, and then there's a bonus Wily Castle with unique ones to that game. But like it's a completely different engine as well, so it feels different. So all the things like the pause trick from Mega Man 1 you can't do because it's just a new engine. But then things have been slowed down and it's been remade, properly, so it's completely playable and it's really good. They've even redone the music and everything. But Capcom just kind of ignored it after the Mega Drive. Yep. It was released on the Sega channel and then over in Europe physically. And that's all we've ever heard about it until now. So I'm quite excited that that's going to be on it because people will be able to play it.
We're going to round off this list here that we have so far with Sonic Spinball, which is a good time. Vector Man, which I'm excited about because Vector Man's kick-ass. And Wonder Boy and Monster World. And 10 more to come, so...
It's a nice list, really. I mean, I just thought with 40 games, most of them would be the stuff that we always see on the Mega Drive collections. And, you do have that to an extent.
Oh, yeah.
But then there are also some games like, noticeably for me, Castlevania Bloodlines, Mega Man. There are some games which you just kind of think, okay, fair play to you. Those are some really, really impressive games that I weren't expecting to be on there.
Is this the first time that Disney games have appeared on one of these compilations?
I think it is.
I know the Nintendo Minis didn't get any Disney games.
Yeah, I don't think they have been re-released, apart from, obviously, you've got the remake of Castle of Illusion. I don't seem to remember them ever being on one of those compilations. We'll have to wait and see what the final 10 games are.
I wanted to make a comment about Street Fighter II because the Japanese version of this game is coming with one 6-button Genesis controller. The US and I believe European releases are getting 2 3-button controllers. So I don't know if you've ever tried to play Street Fighter with a 3-button.
Yep.
It's not going to be the best time.
It's not a good time.
Oh, but that's the thing as well. Like the Japanese version is actually getting another game that isn't getting released in America. I don't know what it's replacing, but one of the puzzle action Mega Drive games is getting released on the Mega Drive Mini. I'm not sure what obviously the Western version of that is because I haven't compared and contrasted. But I did remember seeing that puzzle action is going to be on the Japanese one, which, that's a pretty good game.
Unexpected.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, we have the Capcom Home Arcade system, which, the list of games isn't quite as exciting. You've got some games on there which, are pretty impressive. You've got Alien vs. Predator, which is the first re-release of the arcade title, so obviously that's quite good. Same with Mega Man The Power Battle, which obviously is a good game as well. You've got other classic games like Darkstalkers, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, because, you've always got to have a Street Fighter game on one of these things.
Every time.
Exactly. Street Fighter 2 Turbo, again. Oh no, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, rather. Strider. And then you've got stuff like Pro Gear, Giga Wing, Ghouls and Ghosts, Final Fight, Eco Fighters, Cyberbots, Full Metal Madness, Captain Commando, Capcom Sports Club, Armored Warriors, and 1944 Loop Master. So that's a bit more of a mixed bag, I feel. There's some good titles on there, but the kicker is the price and the fact that you've got to play on this big fucking ugly arcade stick with see-through buttons.
I was about to say, the biggest problem with it is that the buttons are see-through, or they're painted up to look like the deck, so you can't see your goddamn buttons.
Yeah, so good luck playing a multiplayer game when you're frantically trying to do combos and not being able to see where the fucking buttons are.
Just, what the hell were you thinking?
I suppose they probably wanted to cash in on the craze of these mini systems and these plug-and-play devices. I imagine they'll probably sell some units, but it's quite pricey from what I believe. I'm wanting to say it's like 200 or something.
260 USD, and that is just like, I'm hoping that it's at least, like, the buttons are at least, all standard sized and high quality components so you can switch shit out if you want.
Yeah.
I would sooner take the internals out and put it in, like, something, a small housing and then just attach 2 arcade sticks. That's all they had to do.
I mean, you could get, like, a RetroPie to play the exact same things and then just get, like, a good quality arcade stick.
Yeah. You can buy yourself a pretty solid arcade stick for like a Hori for $70. You can get a solid arcade stick. It's not going to be the nicest one on the planet, but it's going to get the job done very well.
It's going to be nicer than that Capcom one as well.
And then you can get those, and those come in different colors, so you can buy one for you and one for your friend, and those will work on your other consoles as well. And then you can go and spend $40 on a Raspberry Pi. The games may not be official, but with a arcade stick that is as ugly as the Capcom logo right here, I'll go to jail.
Yeah. Right. I think the last piece of news we'll probably cover at the moment is one that we touched on briefly, and that's we got more details of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I personally couldn't give a fuck about. So I think Steve's probably best covering this to give more information.
Okay, so we got a short trailer from the PlayStation State of Play event, and the trailer showed a lot of detail in certain things, which is a good sign, because one of the things I was worried that they wouldn't have is some of the smaller details. But the reports we're hearing is that it's still going to be done in parts. It's going to be done in 3 parts, and that the first part could just be the part in Midgar, which that's not a third of the game. So there's, I'm curious what they're going to cut to fit the rest of the game onto 2 parts. I have mixed feelings because I don't know that I trust modern Square Enix to do this story properly, but it looks like they're trying.
My main problem with this at the minute is that, unlike a lot of other episodic games, this is actually going to be 3 full-priced $60 games.
Yes, I am very not okay with that.
I don't understand why they're even doing this. We have the game released on multiple platforms when all people really wanted was they did Advent Children, and people went, oh my gosh, Final Fantasy VII, I would love a game that looked like this. But they're not going to get the game they want. They're not getting the original game completely reskinned and updated with cutscenes to look like that. There's already a mod for the PC version of Final Fantasy VII to do all the cutscenes like that. It looks amazing. But they're going to get a game that they're going to hate because it's not going to be the game they played as children. Yes. It's going to be an action RPG. It's going to be something completely different. Square Enix would be real smart to come around here soon and go, lol, tee-hee, just kidding, we just made Final Fantasy VII into a movie, so now you can have Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy Advent Children and have the complete story on Blu-ray.
It's another one of those things where I'm like, okay, y'all, the game, I think a lot of people are forgetting what the game was originally like.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have brought this up. All people remember is, oh, how cool did Sephiroth look walking into that fire? It's like,
right?
Okay, that was 15 seconds out of a 100+ hour game.
Well, and the cutscenes were pretty, and the actual animated cutscenes were pretty clean for the PlayStation.
Yes.
So you had that going for it. You did have a sprawling story, a cinematic game, but it was just, I'll take a lot of flack for it gladly. Final Fantasy VII did not age well. Or rather, it did not age as well as it should have.
Its visuals did not. I think the story still holds up.
The story's fine, but when you take a game that released around the same time, Final Fantasy VIII aged better. Final Fantasy VI aged way better.
Well,
Chrono Trigger, and these games that came out earlier, they aged so much better. Final Fantasy VII was just that first introduction to the Final Fantasy series for so many people.
Yeah. Final Fantasy VII has the same problem that Ocarina of Time does, where it was people's first exposure to this franchise and some people's, first exposure to games. So they latch onto it so hard and don't think about, everything around it. And, they don't look at the other games in the series that didn't get as much hype and as much media, but are actually better.
Exactly. So
and here's my thing, yes, 7 is a great game. I love 7. I, have played it the second most out of all the Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy X is a better game. because it did more than 7 did. Now, it doesn't have some of the themes that 7 does, and it doesn't have some of the complexities, but you would think the people that are all, graphics would look at 10 and be like, holy crap, this is amazing.
Exactly.
Which they were at the time, and then they forgot, apparently.
Yeah, it's just, I think a lot of people are going to be real sour and butthurt about Final Fantasy Remake when it comes out.
Yeah.
And that's going to be fine with me because I own the original. So,
yeah, I have the original, the Switch version, and the PC version.
Yeah.
Which, I got to tell you, the Switch port is fantastic. Those extra cheats, quote-unquote, make the game so much better.
So much more tolerable.
Yeah.
I've only got the PlayStation 1 version. I've got it physically and digitally as well, because there was a sale on last month on PlayStation Store, and all of the PS1 Final Fantasy games were $3.99 each. So I just thought, fuck it, just in case my disc stopped working one day, I'll just
can't beat that.
But compare that $3.99 to the £150 odd that you're going to be spending on the remake.
I don't want to spend that much on the remake. I will probably just wait till it's all out, because that is one of the big ones for me.
I mean, you could probably buy like a Switch for the price of that one fucking game.
Yes.
More or less. Like $180 is quite a lot. It seems like they've only split into episodes so they can charge more for it.
That was one of Square Enix's things a while back, was they wanted to break up all their games into pieces so they could sell them multiple times. And like, their entire corporate model was, how can we get more money out of our customers?
Yep.
Not, hey, let's make good games.
And that's why we have Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 13-2, and Final Fantasy 13-3 Girl Cloud.
Well, 13 was part of a bigger problem. The problem wasn't 13. The problem was Fabula Nova Crystallis.
I have a friend who said a while back that the biggest problem with Square Enix was the merger of Square and Enix.
I mean, yeah, because, I think 10 was the last pure Squaresoft game. Ever since, every title has been contentious, except the MMOs. The MMOs have been pretty well received.
Well, except wasn't it 11 where it was released, it bombed horribly, so they completely redid it?
No, that's 14.
No, that's 14.
Oh, that's 14, okay.
And it is actually turned into quite a fantastic game.
Yeah, it's brilliant, but it was abysmal when it first came out, which is why the new version is called A Realm Reborn, because they reset the whole world.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, that's actually a really good point. Every game since 10, with the exception of the MMOs, has been contentious. I mean, 15 is pretty well liked, but, everything else is, drawn battle lines and everything. I hadn't actually considered that before.
Well, we'll see how it is. Maybe it'll be released and turn out to be good, but I guess just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I don't have high hopes.
Yeah. But, releasing it episodic, I suppose that's better than ruining the game and filling it with, microtransactions and stuff. At least it could still be a good game. I'll buy an expensive one. My main concern is you're taking a fraction of the game and making it an entire, one of those 3 parts. That is concerning to me, because it's going to be hard to fit the rest of the game into 2 other parts. Well, the other thing as well, being an RPG, is how are they going to pace it afterwards? Because if you've only got one part, then what are people going to do? They're going to spend extra time in the game grinding.
Yeah.
So you run the risk of people going into the second half being completely over-leveled. Or if you take that into account, then people will be under-leveled and they'll have to do loads of grinding when the second part comes out before they can actually, get into it properly.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to have an adjustable difficulty based on your level where it scales, maybe. I don't know. Again, I suppose it's stuff where you just have to wait and see how it turns out. Right, well, anyway, I think that's all the main news out of the way, so we'll take a relaxing break and then we'll jump into our main topic. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that excellent piece of music that we had over the interlude, and that'll bring us nicely into our main topic for the month, which is games that were exclusive to Japan. So our main topics from now on will be different to previous episodes. Instead of covering 4 games that fit into like a certain theme or genre, we'll actually be discussing a general topic and include a couple of games as talking points. It'll be kind of similar to before, but really we want to delve into the topic and discuss the ins and outs of it.
And also have less loopholes.
Less loopholes as well. So, we're having good examples for the topic rather than this is sort of fitting and trying to fit in loopholes with our choices just for games we want. But yeah, the topic this month, I think it's wise to probably split into 2 separate chunks. So we've got games exclusive to Japan, and I think having ones that are, not only accessible to Western audiences in terms of like the language barrier, so either they're in English or have very little that need translating. And then on the other side, we've got games that are like really Japanese. So either they've got like a lot of text that need translating, or they're just games that maybe Western audiences wouldn't get, like really weird and Japanesey, shall we say.
Yeah, and we've kind of got one of each this month, haven't we? I mean, one of them is very accessible with not a lot of text, and the other one you struggle just to make head nor tail of. I mean, you work it out, but...
You can work it out. It's enough to kind of get by, but, there is a lot of text that needs translating, and it's strange. I mean, I think we'll leave the strange stuff until later and kick off with the more straightforward stuff. We'll start off by jumping into the first game choice. So that game's Getsu Fumaden. It was released back in 1987 for the Famicom and was developed and published by Konami, who were of course famous for Castlevania. The story is that a demon lord has returned and it needs to be slayed. If that sounds familiar, probably sounds exactly the same as Castlevania. And yeah, it is. The game's quite Castlevania-ish. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I got a sort of a feeling of Zelda 2 mashed with Castlevania, but with like none of that RPG stuff.
I mostly just went, oh, it's Castlevania.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you're into the 2D stuff, it's very Castlevania-ish, apart from like everything just comes straight at you. Like,
yeah, it's Castlevania, but not as good.
Yeah, basically. It does have that kind of Castlevania design, but everything just comes at you in waves and you don't really have much chance to deal with it. But it's that kind of style.
Well, yeah, and it was a weird thing, too, because, like, immediately, okay, so your weapon is kind of slow, but it cuts in a huge arc. You have your sword and it just goes swoosh all in front of you, making it already a more effective weapon than the whip.
And
in Castlevania.
And hit at the same time.
Yeah, you can do it's a better combat than Castlevania. But they went, what is the worst part of Castlevania? I think it's the Medusa head. Everything's a Medusa head now. Everything flies in a wave pattern.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, you've got the big Medusa head type things, but then you've got like the enemies, like the pregnant clown things that give birth to eggs that fall along the floor. I don't know what the hell they were. But like they come straight at you and there's not really that much opportunity to kill them before they actually hit you, normally by touching you. So the only chance you've got of killing them without getting hit is to like stay on a high ledge and just kind of chop at the head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the way this is sort of different though is that you've got more of a health bar. Like with Castlevania, you die very quickly. With this, you've definitely got a lot more leeway. And you can pick up health by collecting the souls of the people you've killed. So in that sense, it's a bit more forgiving. But it also feels like they do that because you're going to get hit. It sort of feels like they've just put it in there just to make the game playable.
Right. I did take notice immediately of a couple things, and that is sound effects primarily. And I recognized a handful of those sound effects from TMNT, including the pause screen.
I don't really remember TMNT. I
didn't notice that.
I blocked that from my memory, but
the when you hit pause, it has the same little pause chime from TMNT, and there's just a lot of like the attack sound effects are the same.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because
they're
Ultra is Konami, so
they probably just reused a lot of kind of assets and a lot of ideas. I say the game itself feels a bit Castlevania. They use the sound effects from TMNT, so they've probably just borrowed from other resources that they have at their disposal.
And it's funny, like a game like this, it makes me wonder, why wasn't this ported to the US? Why didn't it ever get out of Japan?
I mean, it feels very Castlevania-ish, which obviously was big in the West too. So that surprises me, because not only did it get released in Japan for the Famicom, it did get a re-release on the Wii, the Wii U, and the 3DS on the eShops. But all of those have been Japanese exclusives.
Right.
I mean, it's not like there's much to translate in the game, apart from like the opening dialogue and the shop. Like the rest of it is, you don't need to translate really. I mean, there's just bits and pieces. I don't think it would be a particular big thing to do.
Right.
And they could say, hey, look, here's this game which is very much in the style of a Castlevania type thing, and it's never been released outside of Japan. Here it is. Buy it. But they've never really done it.
Personally, I don't think the game's very good, so that might be one of the reasons why it hasn't really had a broader appeal.
But that's the thing, though. I mean, they have re-released it on the virtual consoles, which obviously they don't do with all their games. They've done that with like Castlevania, and they've done it with Getsu Fumaden and some of their other, properties. But it's not like they release just all their shit when it comes to the eShop. They haven't. They've released this for some reason on the virtual console. So there does seem to be like some degree of popularity, possibly in Japan. But yeah, I don't know. Because if it was just shit and no one wanted it, they wouldn't re-release it 3 times.
Right.
Yeah, I guess.
And I don't think it is a bad game. I think it's definitely rough around the edges, and it doesn't feel as good as Castlevania, and it's definitely got problems. But I still think it's a reasonably enjoyable game. I mean, like, for me, the music is really, really good.
It is quite enjoyable.
Yeah, like the music's really good. I mean, the game itself has a lot of big problems, but I wouldn't call it a bad game by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, it's not that it's an objectively bad game, it's that we have much better examples of what it was doing.
I think it's because it evokes a feeling of Castlevania, and it's nowhere near as good as Castlevania.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the thing is with Castlevania, it's like, you're going through a level. If you get hit by an enemy, it's your fault. Because the controls are tight, they're responsive. In Getsu Fumaden, if you get hit by an enemy, 50 out of 50, it's going to be the game's fault.
Yeah.
Because shit just comes flying at you.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of the enemies take 2 hits to kill, and there's no stunning them with the first hit. They will just keep coming on.
So, like, a lot of the times you'll hit an enemy and you can't get out of the way because they're still coming at you.
Yeah.
So you have to take that hit. So the only other thing you can do is just hit them with that second shot and then pick up their soul to regain some health, which, as I say, just feels like they're sort of plastering over a problem rather than, addressing it.
Yeah, it just seems quite a lot of the time it's just impossible to avoid taking damage.
Yeah. And as I say, it's disappointing because Castlevania is not like that. I mean, Castlevania is far more punishing when you get hit, but then usually it's your fault.
Yeah.
You can deal with Medusa heads. You can deal with bats. You can deal with all the annoying stuff very easily once you know what to do. But in this, it kind of feels like you just have to mop up as much health as possible after getting hit. And that's basically your strategy.
I'm curious if another reason it didn't really make it over here is because it appears to be rooted a bit more in Japanese mythology.
That is a very possible reason. There's a lot of times those games don't transfer.
And so even if they translate it, there'd be a lot of stuff that would just be kind of, people would go, huh? I don't understand the significance of this or why this is happening when in Japan the story is mythology and therefore relatively common knowledge, it just ties together better.
And the other thing is there could be things that don't have translations.
Well, I mean, the actual story itself is basically the same as Castlevania. Maybe the monster designs are more rooted in Japanese mythology. But I think the actual stories, because it's effectively the same as Castlevania, I don't see a problem with the actual main story. I don't know.
There was another, and I've mentioned it before, there was another game that didn't make it over, was, and I might butcher this name just a little bit, but so...
That's the problem with this episode, is us trying to pronounce.
Yeah, but it's a Famicom Musha Shimbashina Shin Onagashima, which is a Famicom game. It's more of a novel, like a game novel versus just like, straight up gameplay. There's a whole lot of story going on, and it hasn't gotten a proper translation, not even like a proper fan translation. And I've had like a read down of what the story's about, and it looks rather fascinating. The gameplay seems interesting, but if you can't read Japanese, you're not going to be able to play that game. And if you're not familiar with Japanese like folklore, you're not going to get the game because the story is rooted deeply in that. And that might be one of the reasons they just didn't bother.
Possibly.
And it's like, you go kill the monsters, go through the levels, kill monsters, and that's all you really need to know for this. Definitely. There might be a little bit more significance there that you just don't get because you're not reading it.
Yeah, I mean, if it does relate to Japanese culture, then maybe they just think it wouldn't resonate with Western audiences.
Exactly.
Like,
they'll do that in other games where they go, hey, we're going to do this, but we're going to change this one thing or this thing over here when we do the localization just because you won't get it.
Yeah, there's been some questionable translations by the localization teams. Mm-hmm. Like Working Designs was kind of famous for vastly changing things. And, obviously some people appreciate and then some people think, what the hell were they thinking?
Exactly.
But there are some games like with this, which I kind of think people would have liked. I mean, Castlevania with samurais, maybe back in 1987, people wouldn't have been into it. But I think now people will be like, yeah, I'd play that. I mean, for example, there's a game on the Saturn called Hisatsu, and it's basically ninjas. It's sort of like cowboy ninjas, more or less. And you play ninja assassins and you have to kill various different fellas. But it's based on a Japanese TV show. So I can imagine that the execs would probably just think, it's a Japanese TV show, we're not even going to bother releasing it in the West.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, obviously the Saturn had different problems with the American market, so there could very well be other issues in that.
Right.
With that particular game, I'd love it if they brought it over here. I mean, just for the music alone, the music in that game is just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like the actual cutscenes and stuff, there's like a tiny cutscene at the beginning of each level, and that's got Japanese written text. There's no voices, and everything else is just in English, so they wouldn't necessarily even have to do that much work in order to do a port. I'm not sure who makes that game, so I'm not sure if they're around to be able to do a port, but yeah, I mean, having a modern version of that or a re-release would be kind of cool. But then you've got stuff like, I mean, have you heard of Densha Digo?
Or it rings a bell.
They've released a game more or less on every console in existence, apart from the Switch and probably the more modern consoles. But it's like an arcade Japanese train simulator. And because it's an arcade game, it's fun, it's easy to pick up. But yeah, you can just imagine like the execs thinking people aren't going to want to play it. But I don't think they would necessarily have to change that much. I mean, it's a train thing, so just change the name of the train stations to something generic. And I think people would want to play it. It's just an arcade experience. But
I think I saw, actually. Didn't you do a video on it at some point?
Yeah, it's been in one of my videos. And like they release controllers and stuff for it. So you've got like this, train controller type thing, pulling on the brakes and stuff. And, it's really fun. I mean, there are some things that are a bit more difficult to get with regards to, signals and stuff like that on the train lines. But, I mean, it's an arcade game, so it's relatively easy to get to grips with and deal with it. But yeah, I mean, can you think of any other games that you think are pretty straightforward but never got a re-release? I mean, obviously you've got complicated stuff like, RPGs maybe, they're a bit more text heavy. But what about any other games where you think they could have just released it with little effort?
Well, you have weird stuff like Doki Doki Panic, which isn't a particularly good game, but...
Hey, you watch your mouth.
It's just weird that when bringing it over to the West, they decided to change it into Super Mario Brothers 2.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to mention it. The reason Doki Doki Panic didn't make it until it was reskinned as Mario 2 or into a Mario game was there were some rights issues I learned. Because it was based off of a TV something rather. The game was basically pushed to market. It was a marketing tool for this like yearly TV event they were doing, and they weren't able to, like, the game came out and they weren't able to basically secure licensing after that, but they wanted to make a Mario game. So they're like, hey, Nintendo made this. Let's just reskin all the assets, or most of them.
So it's basically like the opposite of Die Hard Arcade, where instead of not wanting to use the license, they'd use the license after for the West and just stuck Die Hard on it.
Yeah, basically. I mean, instead they went, oh, we're not going to use this, so let's just put Mario on it that everyone can be familiar with.
Yeah.
They're also the thing where they thought the actual Mario 2 was too hard for us.
Which, I'm sorry, like, Lost Levels gets really hard. There are some just wicked hard jumps. But some of the levels in Super Mario Bros., like our Super Mario Bros. 2, are a lot harder.
Yeah.
But it's kind of weird because there are a lot of games where they are pretty hard anyway, and they still get, they still see it through to the West with no problems. But then, obviously, like, as you say, the original Super Mario Bros. 2, they thought, too hard, we'll just release something else.
Well, and I think that is more a result of the time period, because we had just gotten video games back up and running in the West.
Yeah.
I think obviously as time went on, that wasn't a factor because they realized, hey, the Americans aren't that dumb.
Yeah. I mean, like, next generation, you've got the complete opposite. If you think of Streets of Rage 3, Bare Knuckle 3 was pretty much the same difficulty as the second game. And then they released it in America and Europe, and they just made it balls to the wall hard for no reason. So the Japanese version is actually a lot easier. And weird. No idea why.
That seems to be a recurrent theme, actually, for games that are ported over to the West from Japan. The Japanese ones always seem to have extra concessions for accessibility and difficulty. They always seem to be like that, a little bit easier.
On the 8-bit versions, obviously you've got stuff like Super Mario Bros. 2, but then you've got Mega Man 2, where Mega Man 2, in America, you've got normal and hard mode, which the hard mode is the regular mode in the Japanese version. So it kind of feels like initially with the NES and what have you, the Japanese versions were a lot harder, and then in the next generation it's sort of switched around for God knows what reason.
Because they can.
Yeah, I mean, more modern games generally do have kind of like an easier time in the Japanese versions. I mean, a lot of the Resident Evil games do actually have those extra concessions in the Japanese versions.
Yeah, the Japanese version of Resident Evil 1 on the Saturn, you've got auto aim, for example, which isn't in the Western version. And then I know, like, Perfect Dark and GoldenEye, the hardest difficulty mode is a lot easier because you've got, like, extra body armor and stuff. So, yeah, it's odd how things have changed. But also as well, there are some games, just going back to like Japanese exclusives, there were games that got released, but like way after the fact. I mean, Stephen, I remember you mentioning like a while ago about a game that took forever just to get a re-release. Was it like a Final Fantasy game or a game or something? Where it was like 14 years and they finally did a re-release of it.
I think what I mentioned was the Final Mix version of the Kingdom Hearts games.
Yeah, it could have been.
Yeah, I think that was what it is because The only other thing that I mentioned frequently is Seiken Densetsu 3, which is one that we've never gotten, but it's one of those that it's the sequel to Secret of Mana, but it's one of those that you cannot play if you can't read Japanese or have the translation that was done by fans.
So that's not being released again?
No.
So that's basically like Mother 3, where people want it, but it's just not happening.
People want it, have translated it, and told Nintendo, hey, use our translation, and they won't do it.
Right.
Because they hate money.
It's strange as well, because sometimes you can get like a large fan base, and they will basically do a port or a remake or something. And there's things like Mother 3 where, you've got this huge fan base. It seems like it's growing year after year, and they're constantly demanding this game. And Nintendo just seems to ignore them.
Because they hate money.
Yeah. It's the weirdest thing.
Well, another game that has kind of like similar circumstances surrounding it is Final Fantasy III, which the version of Final Fantasy III that we got over here on the SNES was, I believe, Final Fantasy V? Six. In Japan. And it took them such a long time to actually release the original Final Fantasy III over here. Even on the PSP, there is no physical release of Final Fantasy III. I had to import a copy. Now, you can play it on the PSP. The PSP is region free, and it has fully English text when you play it on a Western PSP. So it's kind of like, why are they so reluctant to release this one particular Final Fantasy game? All the other ones you can go out and buy in the shops. But it wasn't until so many years later when they actually thought, okay, maybe we'll bring it out on the DS. And they finally brought it out.
2006 that we finally got Final Fantasy III. It was the only one we didn't have at that point.
But like I said, they did have a translation. Because I have the PSP version, the Japanese PSP version, and it plays in English.
That's because the PSP version was basically the DS game. Like, it's the same game. It wasn't even possible for us to play until 2006. Well, okay, possible for us to play and know what's going on.
It's just weird that they kind of like take that extended amount of time to do it on such a popular series.
A lot of what they did was when they re-released 1, they would do 1 and 2 at the same time. I think that's the only reason we had 2 in any form, because a lot of people like to just abandon 2. So I think, we already had 4, and they gave us 5 in, I think it was like the late 90s when we got the PS1 versions. But for some reason, when we had 5 and 6 paired together on the PS1, and then for some reason we got 4 and Chrono Trigger instead of 4 and 3. Final Fantasy Anthology is 5 and 6, and Final Fantasy Chronicles is 4 and Chrono Trigger. I still don't understand why when they could have just put 3 in there.
Yeah, and you've got Origins being 1 and 2.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. It's kind of strange how they do. I mean, it leads us nicely into the next game, to be honest, because this is a game that I don't think it had like a massive fan base, but it must have had something, because after the game, it managed to get a manga, and then it eventually got a remake. But like the remake was completely different. That game is Baroque, which was how would you describe this? Like a first-person RPG horror dungeon crawler? It's just stuff. It's weird as hell. I mean, I can completely understand why they didn't release it in the West. I mean, obviously with the Saturn, you've got the Western market, so, that's understandable where it is, but you'd have thought, PS1, it could still have been a possibility, but obviously they didn't because it was weird as hell, but they did eventually release it in the West. I mean, they changed it quite a fair bit, because they did a remake, and what was that on? It was on the Wii and...
It was on the
PlayStation
Wii,
2.
PlayStation 2 as well.
PlayStation 2, and we did, I think, did the GameCube get it at the same time with the...
I don't think it was on the GameCube. I think it was a Wii. So, they changed the gameplay a fair bit. So, it had, a third-person style, and...
you could switch back to first, though.
Yeah, but then, the actual the atmosphere and everything was completely changed because it had more of an anime art style, whereas in the PS1 and the Saturn versions, everything's like really gritty and weird, rather than this like kind of bubbly anime style, which I think was probably done to appeal to more Western audiences.
Well, and it is weird because it does have a very horrible atmosphere. Like, it sets into kind of just everything is sort of awful.
Yeah, it's like...
Which is a shame, because I would like to know why everything is awful.
I mean, from what I gather, I've not looked into the story because that would be too easy. I like trying to piece together what I think of it. But it seems like it's some kind of purgatory or something, or some kind of hell, maybe. Because you get dumped into this world, and there's sort of angelic-looking figures outside this tower. And then you enter the tower and you have to fight your way through it. And then when you die, there's a cutscene that happens and it shows you sort of getting rejuvenated. And then you get dumped to the bottom again. So it feels like this sort of cyclical story where maybe you're undergoing some kind of punishment or something. So it seems like a kind of a hellish landscape.
Oh, yeah, it is fair. You forgot in your genre list that it is also a roguelike.
Yeah, definitely, because it's got procedural generation, so like every time you play it's different. I mean, it's not vastly different because it kind of looks sort of similar, but like the layout of everything is different and the items and weapons you pick up. The story, I reckon, is completely incomprehensible.
It's all in Japanese, got no idea what they're saying.
Yeah, it's all in Japanese, so it's kind of hard to pick up because it's such a weird game anyway, so you've not really got that help. And you're picking up these items, and there are some kind of clues, like weapons have got a sword symbol next to it, and you've got like a number representing the power.
Yeah, as I say, thank God for the occasional like defense, like the DEF2 and ATK and stuff, and like your standard, those being in English, because like otherwise I would have been. I didn't play very much, but mostly because I couldn't understand what the hell was going on. But it would have been almost completely unplayable if I didn't know what I was looking at. I would have had to punch everything to death.
Definitely. I mean, like, there are little armor symbols next to, like, clothes and stuff you can use. And you've got the stats of it, which, again, helps a little. But then other stuff, apart from stuff that says, like, plus vitality, which I assume is, like, healing stuff, other stuff, you press it and maybe something noticeable happens. Like, there's one that came up with, like, these green lines in a cross, and it looked like, you know, the start of RoboCop where they're tightening the visor scans? It looked like that. And I had absolutely no idea what it did. I just know it did it. So, you know, maybe it's something that you can find, you know, in a guide somewhere maybe for the remake. But there are just like a lot of items and you just have no clue what they do. So aside from like armor and weapons, you're pretty much left on your own. I mean, personally, I think it adds to the horror atmosphere because you're sort of wandering around without knowing what's happening in this strange world. So I do think it adds the horror atmosphere, but...
Accidental enhancement.
Well, yeah, but it makes it bastard hard.
I did go and flip through a little bit of gameplay of the Wii version, or one of them, and where it was all in third person, and yeah, it does, everything's a little bit more not as horrible. But some of the characters, some of the NPCs are still just awful.
Yeah.
But the biggest difference between the two that I can tell, because even the remake versions even use a lot of the same sound effects, like the attack and walking sound effects are all the same. They just ported them right over. And the world doesn't look terribly different either. It's a little bit more crisp.
Those monsters with the big titties?
I didn't see that part.
Because like one of the first monsters that at least I saw during my playthroughs were these big green mutant fat ladies with the boobies hanging out.
Yeah, and they poison you, don't you?
Yeah, so that's certainly interesting. And
I ran into flying fish.
I can't imagine that on the Wii for some reason. I can't imagine Nintendo allowing it.
But one of the biggest differences right out the gate was the music. They redid the soundtrack.
Yeah, because there's not really much of a soundtrack on the Saturn version. It's more atmospheric.
I don't know about the Saturn. I was emulating on PlayStation.
Yeah, I think they're both the same, the PS1 and the Saturn version.
I believe they are, but there is, like, the soundtrack is not super, it's not like this big thing, but it's there and it's very...
Yeah, so I think it's more to do with the atmosphere, so you can sort of hear it in the background, just giving...
Yeah, it's very, very good, though.
Yeah, definitely.
And in the remake, it's different and it's bad.
Huh.
It ruins the atmosphere because they tried to make it a bit more upbeat, and it just falls flat.
Yeah, that's very strange because, as you say, the music in the original one was pretty good.
Yeah, it really kind of helps with that atmosphere. I mean, this game for me is probably one of the most atmospheric games that I've played, honestly. Just down to that kind of like silence that you have, or really, really quiet atmospheric noise as you're going around. As you said, there is music, but it's slight.
Very understated.
Yeah, it's understated, and you're going around these dark rooms, and like you enter a room, you can't see the other side of the room because it's in shadow. It's only as you go forward that it kind of like lights up a bit, so you don't really know what you're going into, and you have all these really strange enemies, and occasionally you'll walk into a room and you'll see like there'll be like, I'm assuming it's some kind of ghost, and it'll either rush towards you or just move backwards and fade into the wall. And it's a really kind of like,
what the fuck is going on? Yeah, I didn't really understand that because I only got it like maybe a couple of times where the ghost thing appeared. It does seem to be random and it doesn't seem to do anything, but it's there and it's weird and creepy as hell. Like, I would say that Baroque is one of the scariest games I've played, just because it nails the atmosphere.
For real, though.
How far did you get out of interest? I think I got to, I don't know what floor it will have been, but I think I got to like maybe level 8 in experience, maybe.
I think 8 is about where I got to in terms of level, because I did play about a dozen or so runs of it, but I died like quite a few times as well. Just trying to go through that menu and try and find like which one of these is going to give me more vitality, because your health will regen, but you can't stick around waiting for your health to regen because your vitality goes down. Yeah. So you kind of like have that dual balancing act there. But I did play quite a few runs, and I think my longest one was probably about 20, maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's one of those games where if you're not expecting to get far or to complete it, it's a nice one to dip into for like a brief run. As you say, 20 or 30 minutes maybe tops, and you'll have a good horror experience. And if you treat it more like of an arcade thing where you're just trying to do better each time, I think that's probably the best way to play it without knowing what the fuck's going on. I'm just thinking, I got to level 8 this time, I got to level 10 next time,
I think I got to level 4, and I think I might have hit like the third level, like the third floor of the tower.
For me, one of the hardest parts was finding a weapon at the start.
Right.
Because it took me a while to cotton on that you actually have to stay next to that guy until he's finished, like, I think it's 2 cycles of dialogue.
Yeah, and then it gives you a gun.
Yeah, because normally you just stand next to an enemy, and not next to an enemy, next to an NPC, and the talking will happen automatically. So I was just like, okay, let's just walk past this guy. He's got something to say, and I didn't realize that he would keep on talking and then give me the gun. So like the first time I played it, I wandered into the tower and I didn't have a weapon. I was like, okay, I'm going to die very quickly because I couldn't find a weapon, and it was like, okay, this run's ended.
But even with that gun, it only gives you 5 bullets. So
yeah,
you kind of like want to...
Well, no, the sword's behind him. So once you finish speaking to him, he'll give you the gun. But then you have the sword behind him as well. So you do have access to like something to slash and some kind of weapon.
Oh, I didn't get the sword outside. I got the sword inside.
Yeah, there's a weapon right behind him. So as soon as you finish speaking, he'll let you pass and you can pick it up, then equip it. Like I used that sword for most of it until I found like something that was a little bit stronger.
There's another NPC in that first area as well, guarding another portal, and it seems that his portal goes down in the tower while the other one goes up. It kind of seems like you can go both ways. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I think Well, the way I did it was going down, so it was like BF1, BF2, BF3, BF4. I didn't realise there was another portal.
You've got the angel just to the right of the path you go up to get into the tower. If you go further right from the angel, there's another guy with another portal. Maybe they actually go to the same place and it was just a random generation that was giving me different results.
Yeah, possibly. I'm not sure. Well, either way, I mean, I don't think it makes that much difference whether you're going up or down. I imagine it still feels pretty similar. I just wonder if, once you reach like a certain checkpoint, because I know that there are like chunks and the game will like save after, like a big chunk, like I think it's like 10 floors or something maybe, and then it'll go on to the next part. I'm not sure whether that next part has a different aesthetic or whether it still has that kind of mechanical type look.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't get further than that.
Yeah, I don't think I'll get that far. I think when I got to level 8, it was maybe the 5th floor or something, so yeah, I don't think I'll ever get that far. I'm just happy to get as far as I got.
I have to say, it doesn't seem to be without its bugs, though. There are more than a couple times where going through some of the menus, you'll select something and it will just basically stop the game. I mean, the music will still be going on in the background, but you won't be able to do anything with a controller or menu or anything. It will just stop you from pressing anything and it will just hang there. I had that happen a few times. And because I can't read the menu text, I don't know exactly what it is that I did.
Maybe it's like a pause button or something you press during the menu. Maybe there's something that happens during the menu and you hit something. Don't think I've ever had that, but yeah, I don't know. Not that I remember anyway. Maybe it's an issue with your CD. Maybe it's a button function during the menu. I don't know. That's the problem with these games when you don't really understand what's going on. It can be difficult because there's no fan translation either. So, I mean, the remake's probably the closest thing you've got. But then it's comparing like the items and stuff and weapons. You can't really do that with a remake because the names are so different.
Yeah.
And they look different.
But for the most part, you can work stuff out. You can work enough out to be able to get a good idea of what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, can you think of any other games that are like really weird and stuff, and that's probably why we didn't see it? I mean, I can think of stuff like maybe Pulley Ruler, which maybe got like a release in the arcades or something. But it's a beat 'em up and you control a kid with a wand, and there's just like weird stuff going on.
Most major horror franchises did release in the West as well.
Yeah. Oh, apart from, there was I can't remember the name of it. There was a NES game that was a horror game, which people say is fantastic.
Oh, you're talking about Sweet Home?
Sweet Home, that's the one.
That was like the precursor to Resident Evil.
People talk about it all the time and say, oh, it's fantastic. And I don't believe that ever got released in the West, did it?
No, it didn't. There are fan translations, though. You can get a fan-translated ROM of that.
That's cool. I might load onto my my RetroPie and play it at some point.
I'd never even heard of it until one of you guys mentioned it.
Yeah, I only heard about it like randomly. Someone just mentioned it. It could have been on the Retro Game Squad podcast or somewhere like there where I overheard it. But it was just an offhand comment.
Yeah, I did touch on it briefly when I spoke about Resident Evil last year. But it is basically a mansion exploration thing, and you have a team of people and you can choose which character to control, and you can move about to kind of like different areas of this mansion. You don't have to stay together, you can split up and you choose which character to control, and it's an interesting little game. You can kind of see how Resident Evil was kind of born from that idea.
Okay, so there's one game I can think that was just way too weird. I'm really sad it didn't make it to the US. And if it did make it to the US, then I don't know where or when, but it's called Ski Jump Pair Reloaded.
Ski Jump what Reloaded?
Ski Jump Pair Reloaded.
Like, pear is in the fruit or pear is in two items?
As a pair is in two.
Okay.
And I guess it started off as a pachinko machine thing, but it got ported to a proper game on PlayStation 2 and I think PSP. And it's a ski jumping game, and I can't explain it because it's two people on skis and like you do tricks, like tricks happen and stuff, and I've only watched the game be played, and it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Like one of the jumps is there's 3 people on this huge set of skis, and it's 2 people and then a little person, and they're going down the ski slope, and the dude on the back grabs the little person, hops off the skis and starts running behind, throws the little guy like a football, to which the person who is now in midair catches the little person, lands, and then spikes him in the snow. And this is a real game.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
And I'm pretty sure it never ever got an official release, but that is the PSP region locked?
No.
Well, then if you have a PSP, you can get it on that. But as far as I know, it was only released in Japan.
One that wasn't released for a while, but we did eventually get was the first Mother game. I mean, we didn't see that until a couple of years ago.
Because what they did, they released Earthbound, and then people were scrambling for Mother, and they did. What did the fan translation call it? It was like
the fan translation was Earthbound 0.
I mean, that's the good thing, really, is that some of these games are exclusive. They do find eventual release. I mean, I just say with like the Mother games, they eventually got a release. Another title as well, Sin and Punishment for the N64, was something that people were after for ages, and then it got a Wii re-release, I think.
Yeah.
So, you do kind of get these releases far after the fact. Final Fantasy III is another example. So, I mean, they're not out of the question, no matter how old they are. As long as the company still exists, there's still a possibility we might get it.
Yeah, so give us Seiken Densetsu 3, Square.
Yeah, could happen.
It frustrates me because they put out a collection of Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana, and Seiken Densetsu 3 on the Switch in Japan. Like, that's the thing you can buy on the Switch, but we can't have it because they never translated the third one officially.
Honestly, it's quite lazy. You kind of think that with the online service stuff, fine, release these Japanese games, but put in the effort to translate it. Give us something of value. I mean, I know not everyone like me, for example, wouldn't be interested either way, but, put in the effort occasionally, like twice a year maybe, to translate a Japanese game to release it, just as something to offer people.
Well, especially because the Mana series is so good for Switch because the second and third one were so built around co-op that they're a perfect fit on the Switch because co-op is easy to jump in and out of.
Right.
Just work from that to translate.
It wouldn't even be that hard. So it's not like we're still figuring out the language barrier here. It's like they have professionals that do this. It would be very little effort to run through, translate, and then run it by a couple checks to make sure that there's not any like messed up grammar or
this guy are sick.
Yeah, I am error.
But with the Resident Evil 4 on the Switch, they couldn't even be bothered to make the subtitles work, so don't underestimate how lazy some developers are.
And here's the thing, they don't even need the professionals. The fans have already translated it and said, hey, Square, use our translation.
Well, I can kind of see why they wouldn't do that, because it does open them up to litigation. If the person who did this fan translation years down the line said, you're making a lot of money off of this, and I actually did this translation, they would have a case in court. So
yeah, I know all the legal reasons. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, if some guy can basically knock it together in his basement, why can't a team of professionals do it properly?
Yeah, that's the other thing is,
Yeah.
Or, I mean, you can use the fan translation, but draw up a contract where you actually pay the person who did the translation for their work.
You can pay them a menial amount.
Anyway, so they could just say, okay, this is how much we'll pay you for it.
But yeah, even if they went the professional translation route, the cost of a translation would surely be made back by opening it up to a completely new market.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Because you have people like Steven who were just like, oh my god, the sequel we never got.
And you'd be able to charge a fair amount of money for it, and people will still probably get it anyway.
And Secret of Mana has a pretty big cult following. It's not a super duper great game, in my opinion, but it's not without merit. I'm not saying it's a bad game, and there are people who absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I also think
would just shit themselves if they got the sequel.
Well, the thing is, if they got, from a marketing standpoint, doing this translation would be very little effort, and it would gain hype enough for them to, revisit the series with a sequel or a reboot or something like that.
Yeah, and not only that, but they've already put it up on Switch, so they're clearly willing to sell this game.
Yeah. It's not like they think it's bad and they're ashamed of it.
Well, it's like going back to Getsu Fumaden. They've released it on the Wii, the Wii U, the 3DS, but the minimal translation involved isn't really worth it. So they don't see it as a bad game, but they don't want to go to the effort of actually making it available to Western audiences.
It's just annoying. It's just like, what was the other one? Fire Emblem. Most of the Fire Emblem games we haven't gotten, including what I think is probably one of the better ones, Genealogy of the Holy War. They gave us one of the Japanese exclusive ones, so we might see more of them down the line, but, that's still left to be seen.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I think now's probably a decent enough time to do it, because with Smash Brothers, the Fire Emblem characters are already in, a lot of Nintendo users' mindsets.
Yeah.
Because people know them through that series, Marth and Roy and stuff are the ones that I've got in my mind because I grew up with Smash Brothers Melee. So those characters are well-known characters to me, even though I've never played a Fire Emblem game.
Right.
So, same thing will happen with Smash Brothers Ultimate. All these Fire Emblem characters, people will know them already without even having played any games.
Yeah, and I think we have Marth's game, we have Ike's game, and we have Corrin's game. We don't have Roy's game yet.
Right. Classic game. Roy's the best one.
From what I understand, that game was pretty good. I've got a cartridge for it. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Cool. Right, well, I think we've covered a fair bit of our thoughts on this topic. We've gone into quite a fair bit of depth as to, what we reckon about these Japanese exclusive games. Personally, I find it quite interesting to look at these Japanese exclusive titles. I know that a fair few titles I've covered on my channel have been exclusive to Japan, and they're unique, shall we say. They're very Japanese. You can tell that's where they've come from.
Yeah, what's the name of the one that you're currently playing? Because I picked up a different version of that, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. And that's another Japanese exclusive title as well. Ninja Jajamaru-kun.
Yeah, I wasn't about to pronounce that myself. Because, you're playing the Saturn version, aren't you? But
Well, it's a sort of a sequel, really. It's a Saturn version, and in the Saturn version, there are these small sections from the NES game. And the NES game is, I say NES, Famicom. The Famicom game is the one that you've got.
Yeah, because I watched your videos. I saw it and thought, I really don't want to play that Saturn version, but those bonus levels look cool. So I found out that the Famicom versions were essentially the Famicom version is what the bonus levels are, basically. And I found it online for £3. So I thought, why not?
Why not? Well, those bonus stages, which are the Famicom ones, they're the best part of the game. Yeah. The game itself is pretty solid, and again, I think it probably would have done reasonably well in the West. The monster designs are weird as hell, and the bosses are terrible. But the game is still pretty fun and pretty enjoyable. Although I think the Famicom version is probably better, to be honest. But I suppose that because they're so unique and a bit strange, that probably the executives over in Japan just didn't have faith that the games would be profitable enough.
Yeah, but the good thing is as well, with a lot of Famicom games are super cheap. Really, really cheap. So if you've got a way to play them, then you can build up a pretty big library pretty quickly. I don't have a Famicom, but I have Retron 5, which can play Famicom games. So
I think that's probably...
So you can get games dirt cheap.
Well, same with not really the same, but sort of the same with the Saturn. Like, Japanese versions of a lot of games are a hell of a lot cheaper. For example, KO Flying Squadron 2 is like 200 quid or something like that for the Western version. And it's mostly in English anyway. So you get the Japanese version, you pay like a very small fraction of that price, and it's basically the same game. And there's a lot of Japanese exclusive titles as well that are, completely accessible. I mean, like Baroque less so, but even then I would still say it's enjoyable, and for the small price that it goes for, it's probably worth playing if you're into like horror games and you don't mind not being able to beat it.
Yeah, and you've got stuff like Dynamite Deku, which came out as Die Hard's trilogy, was it? No, Die Hard Arcade. And
again, it's a lot cheaper.
It's completely in English. It just doesn't have the Die Hard tie-in.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't want to pay a super huge amount for that game anyway, because it's only like half an hour long.
Yeah, but you should be playing Dynamite Cop anyway.
Stephen, is that the one on the Dreamcast?
No, it's
maybe?
No, Dynamite Cop. Because Dynamite Decker is the Saturn game, and I think the sequel, it might have been PlayStation or something like that. I've heard
I know.
I've played it.
I played it in the arcades.
Right, okay. It was on the arcades, but I'm sure it did get a console release.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Someone there knows. I'm wanting to say Dreamcast, but yeah.
Dreamcast, yep.
There we go.
The better Saturn.
Fuck you, Ryan.
There it is.
Right, so yeah, I think that's enough with that topic for now. So I think we'll have another break and we'll go into our next segment. Okay, so our post-main topic segment is something a little bit different. The four of us each have our own specialty that we're going to talk about, and we're basically going to highlight a game from each week, whether it be official or unofficial. Just going to spend a few minutes talking about a particular game and our impressions of it. Think of it like an honourable mention section for stuff we won't be covering as a main game, either in this episode or in future episodes, but we still want to talk about for a little. I mean, the initial premise was Matt's idea, so Matt, do you want to kick off with the first one?
Yeah, okay. My segment, we're going to call it Matt's Doom Mod of the Month, because I could talk about Doom forever, basically. And what I wanted to do is basically, for whatever the theme of the episode is, find a Doom mod that kind of ties into it. And the one that I have for this month is called the Japanese Community mod for Doom. Now, it isn't a Japanese themed mod. What it is, it's a mod created entirely by Japanese developers. And it's a full 32 level replacement for Doom 2's levels, basically. All done by Japanese developers, all new music as well. There's a new HUD for it, although that is in a separate mod, so you need a version of Doom 2 that you can add multiple mods to, because not all of them can. And I've not played through the whole of this, but I've played through about the first third. I think I've played through about the first 10 levels or so. And the quality is really up there. There were one or two frustrating bits, but in general, the quality is really, really good. You've got a lot of really challenging maps, and a lot of them, even if you kind of like a bit of a Doom veteran like me, you kind of still have the challenge there of kind of like, okay, you've got these monsters here, you've got these monsters over here. What's the best way to take them out? What's the best weapon to use? Stuff like that. And it creates a lot of really interesting challenges within the levels. And it's just a lot of fun to play. It can be downloaded for free. It's only 12, 13 megs. And if you just type in Japanese Community Project into Doom World, you will find it. I believe the guy who actually put the project together is called Tatserd Kako, which is probably not his real name. And he essentially got all these people together because there have been attempts in the past to do Japanese mod collections, but they've all kind of like failed. And this guy basically thought, okay, I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to reach out to all these people that kind of like make these maps, and we're going to do something together. We're going to put it together, and we're going to release this thing. And that's what they did. And it is really, really solid. It really is. And it's well worth checking out if you're into Doom and Doom 2.
How would you compare it to the existing episodes in terms of quality ranking?
I'd say probably a 7 to 8 out of 10. If the originals are at a 10, then a 7 to 8 out of 10, I would say.
Nice one.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So definitely one of the better Doom mods you've played.
Yeah, and it actually won an award as well, the 23rd Annual CACO Awards. It is the winner of that from, I believe, 2016.
Nice. So it's quite old then, a few years old.
Yeah, it's about 3 years old.
All right, nice one. Well, I suppose Doom's like however many years old, so...
Yeah, I mean, Doom is older than we are, so...
Exactly.
It's definitely worth picking up and giving a blast.
Excellent. Right, for my game, I'm going to talk a little bit about Togepi's Great Adventure. So again, this is another Japanese exclusive title, and it was for the Pokemon Mini. If you're wondering what the hell a Pokemon Mini is, then that should probably give you a good idea as to why it never got released outside Japan. So it was like a small handheld device. It was kind of like a tiny Game Boy, but I mean, it sort of had the power of like a Tamagotchi or something, and it ran exclusively Pokemon games. So as you can imagine, it wasn't really very popular. It did get a release in America and Europe, but, you know, most of the games were released in Japan. It got 10 games in total, so maybe like half of those were Japanese exclusives. So, you know, either way, it wasn't a massive hit, either in Japan or overseas. And Togepi's Great Adventure is probably the most ambitious of the 10 games. You basically control Togepi, who, if you're familiar with Pokemon, it's like the little Pokemon that comes out of the egg that's in the anime that gets carried around by Misty. And he gets picked up by a Fearow, which is like this big bird thing, and gets dumped at the top of a tower. And he's basically got to make his way out and avoid traps. So each floor's got a time limit, and you need to make your way to the stairs. You avoid holes or traps or solve like basic puzzles. You know, in a sense, it kind of feels like Super Monkey Ball. So you've got that short time limit, and you have to make your way to the exit and carefully guide your way around this, like, I suppose, an obstacle course. It's pretty fun as well. I mean, you're using like this tiny D-pad for navigation, which, you know, is not the easiest thing in the world. I mean, if you played like Super Monkey Ball Junior, which was on the, I think it was on the Game Boy Color or the Game Boy Advance or something, then you'll probably know kind of how it feels. But it's still a good time. I mean, the big problem with the game is it's pretty rare. And a box version of this is probably like 600 and odd euros. And if you want unboxed, it's like half of that. So what, 300? Which is pretty pricey. And obviously that's in addition to getting a Pokemon Mini itself, which maybe is another 50 quid. You know, I mean, as I say, it's got the power of a Tamagotchi though, so it's dead easy to emulate, which is what I did, obviously. And is probably the preferred way to play. As you can imagine from the description, the game's pretty straightforward and accessible, so the Japanese doesn't really matter. These two dudes, Mr. Blinky and Snezzy, again, I don't think that's their real name. They translated the game, so if you can't stand looking at Japanese runic symbols, then obviously you can play the translation instead. But yeah, I definitely recommend people give it a shot. There's an experimental emulator for the Retro Pi that runs the Pokemon minigames as well, so you can run it on there. And it's just a neat little puzzle game. I mean, there's not really that much to talk about. A lot of it's kind of avoiding holes or pressing switches to reach the exit. And it can be quite difficult to do in like some of the later levels, but it's quite addictive. It's definitely worth playing if you're a Pokemon fan. I mean, there's not really much to talk about for this game, but there you go. It's just something else for you to play.
It's not one I've heard of. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I mean, like the Pokemon Mini is full of like these weird games. Like there's a racing game, a puzzle game. Yeah, and there's this one which is basically Monkey Ball but Pokemon. I'd definitely recommend, I say, getting the emulator and sticking it on your Pi or your PC or something, and just giving them a shot. because, yeah, they're neat little games. I mean, they're not fantastic, and you can tell why it was never successful, but there you go. Just don't buy it.
Yeah.
To be fair, like, the Pokemon Mini is not amazingly expensive, and like a lot of the games, especially the ones that were released elsewhere, aren't that expensive either. So you could probably, get the entire collection and not spend that much. I think this one is probably just the most expensive. So if you're getting everything apart from this one game, you can probably get it for a reasonable amount.
Yeah.
There's only 10 games in total. It's got less than the 32X, so that's how small the library is. So yeah, moving on to the next person who's definitely going to speak about something Japanesey, I imagine. Steve.
So what I'm going to talk about is actually Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, which is a definitive version of the game. Kingdom Hearts 2 originally came out in 2005 in Japan, and Final Mix came out in, I want to say, 2007, but it only came out in Japan. And this is something they've done for a few games in the series, where they release the Final Mix version, which has additional bosses and updated mechanics and stuff. It's basically the definitive version of each game. And they were Japan exclusive until 2013, when they started releasing them on the HD collections for PS3 and eventually PS4. So lately I've been playing Kingdom Hearts 2 on critical mode, which was the extra difficulty added by Final Mix. And it is tough. I'm not especially good at games, so I did find it challenging, even though I'm pretty good at Kingdom Hearts. But it's well worth checking out, especially because they're so easy to get a hold of now. But yeah, for the longest time, we just didn't have it. Other things they added is, I think they added extra boss fights along the way. They added little puzzle pieces you can collect to get items. But the bosses were really the big thing. You can fight harder versions of all the main bosses in the game, and then there's extra bosses behind them. So it's a pretty comprehensive upgrade to the game that we just didn't see until 2014, I want to say. I think that's when 2.5 came out.
It's hard to keep track with all the Kingdom Hearts games.
So that's basically kind of like the definitive version then. So if you're only going to pick up one version of the game, you want to be picking up those 0.5 editions.
Yes. What I would recommend, if someone wanted to, if someone had no experience with Kingdom Hearts and wanted to get into it, if you have a PS4, get the 1.5 and 2.5 collection and the 2.8 collection, because those two items will get you completely caught up with everything before Kingdom Hearts 3. And then you can get Kingdom Hearts 3 on PS4 as well. That is the simplest way to go about it. I mean, there's obviously some of the games were condensed into movies for those collections because they were on the DS and hard to reproduce. But, if you're just looking for, minimal effort, I want to learn about this series and play through the games, get those collections. The 1.5 and 2.5 are also on PS3, but 2.8 is PS4 exclusive.
Kind of an interesting choice to make it exclusive, especially when 3 came out on Xbox.
Yeah, I thought they were going to release the collections on Xbox to help Xbox players get caught up. And it's like, no, we're just going to give you 3 with no context.
Take that.
Not that they'd be able to follow the story anyway, from what I've heard about Kingdom Hearts.
Kingdom Hearts isn't as complicated as people say. It's just a lot to remember. There's a lot of names and a lot of, concepts you have to come to grips with. And there's just a lot of it to remember. And that's where a lot of people get tripped up.
So if you're coming into the series late, then it's probably going to be more difficult than if you started with the original and gradually build it over time.
Actually, not even. I actually didn't play these games at all until 2012. No, it was early 2013, before the HD collections came out. But I didn't start until then, and I was just fine with it. It's just you have to play the games in order, and you have to play them in one of a number of sequences that works, because there are a couple of games you can move around, but you have to play all of the games, and a lot of people missed certain ones because they were on things like the Game Boy Advance or the DS, and they got all confused, and it's like, well, but you didn't play, you completely missed out on some games. So that's where some of the problems came in, was people missed games or, played them out of order or whatever.
It's a shame.
Nice one. Ryan, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to basically talk about some of the more obscure consoles for maybe the people who are just sort of not necessarily into collecting. If you're into collecting obscure consoles, you probably know about all of them. But maybe if you're into collecting consoles and there's stuff you haven't heard about, just do a quick little chat about it, and even maybe some of these consoles some of you might not even heard of. And since we're doing exclusive to Japan, I think I'll start off with something a little bit light and Japan exclusive, and that would be the Game Boy Light. It was released only in Japan for like about a year. It was released in 1998, I believe. It was a modified Game Boy Pocket that was completely and very nicely backlit. And it came out right before the Game Boy Color, so it didn't really go anywhere. But it was interesting because it was not the first backlit handheld. Obviously, the Game Gear was backlit, and that's where all your batteries went. By the way, was a fluorescent lamp behind the screen, just sucking them dry. But it had a very bright backlit screen, and being in the Game Boy Pocket era, it had gotten a lot better with batteries versus, requiring, was it 4 or 6 AA's? That was the...
Game Gear was 6 AA's, and you had to change them like every half hour.
Like 3 to 4 hours, absolute max. And then the Game Boy had no backlight, and you got about, 10 hours, but it was 4 AA's. The Pocket was much better on batteries.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had the light that was backlit, and you can still buy them. They're kind of expensive for a Game Boy. You're looking starting out at around $150. And then going up from there, they had a whole bunch of special editions that were released for different retailers. Because the most common ones are gold and silver, but there's translucent yellows and reds and all sorts of crazy ones. Again, all Japan exclusive.
Yeah.
So a lot of people haven't even heard of this thing. They've never seen it. And you can go and mod your Game Boys now. They have all sorts of backlighting kits, so it's not super special because some of these backlight kits aren't even that difficult to install. But a lot of these kits are DIYs as long as you have your basic tools to crack the case.
Right.
But if you're a collector or you don't want to change the value of an older console by modifying it, these are available. And being a Game Boy Pocket body, essentially, they're super slick and nice and compact. They look really clean.
It's one of those things that I wish we had gotten because it's a great idea and it seemed to have worked pretty well in execution.
Oh, it worked great in execution, but it was stupid that we got the Game Boy Color. Well, it wasn't stupid that we got the Game Boy Color.
Yeah,
the Game Boy Color is amazing. It was stupid that we had to wait for the Game Boy Color, and the Game Boy Advance before we got the SP with the backlight.
Yeah.
We had to wait a long time for them to reintroduce this.
Because as someone who, tried to play his Game Boy games without light, it don't work that well.
It doesn't work that well. I remember sitting in the back of a car. I don't remember where we were driving, but I'm sitting in the back of the car with my Game Boy, with my Game Boy Color, and I'm angling it out the window so every time we, get near a street lamp,
yep,
I'm able to unpause it and play for, 12 seconds and pause it again, and then quickly pause it and play a little bit more and pause it.
Yep.
Yeah, it was the same with the Game Gear, really. It was a little bit better because you had that light and the colour, but still, in the car, it was kind of getting glimpses of light where you could actually see what the hell was going on. And then other times it's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to play anything.
Yeah,
there's a reason the worm light sold so well.
At one point, I had a little tiny flashlight that I could just hold between my teeth and I could play in the dark.
Yeah.
Modern problems call for modern solutions, so...
Definitely.
I'm looking at picking up one of these eventually to round out my Game Boy collection.
Yeah, I've got a friend who has every Nintendo handheld ever released except this one. So I'm sure he'll get his hands on this eventually.
Yeah, and it's because they weren't made for very long, so they're getting more and more expensive.
Yeah.
And again, they wear down. People used them. They were a Game Boy, so they wear down and wear out just like anything else.
Yeah.
Basically, the thing is if you're going to get one, now is the best time because they're not ever going to get cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice one. Okay, so that's nicely rounded up our little specialist subjects, I think. Thanks a lot for that, guys. So we'll take a final break and we'll go into something a little bit special for this episode. See you soon. Okay, so for the final part, and it's just for this episode, we're not going to do it every time. We're going to have like a little quiz. Just a fun thing to finish things off on. And I'm sure that you guys and gals at home can participate as well. So the topic this month was Japanese games. So what I've done for this quiz is I've handpicked 10 Japanese names from, I'd say, popular retro titles, but known retro titles is probably going to be a more apt description. And you just need to tell me what the name was over in the West. All clear?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Obviously, they're a bit up and down in terms of difficulty. Some will be easier than others. But I'm sure that with regards to the actual Western game, you've probably heard of more or less all of them, I would hope. Right, so let's kick things off. The first one, the name is Akumajo Dracula. Mats, we'll start with you. Any ideas what this game could be in the West?
It'll be one of the Castlevania games. I'm not entirely sure which one.
I need a specific one.
Akumajo Dracula. I'm going to go with Kid Dracula.
Okay. Ryan, any guesses?
I was only going to get as close as Castlevania.
So do you want to just guess a game? Just Castlevania or a specific one?
I'll just shot in the dark Castlevania 3.
Okay. Steve?
I'm going to say Kid Dracula with a little more confidence than Matt did.
Okay. Well, it's actually the original Castlevania. So, no points, unfortunately. So, yeah, I mean, you've got things like Akumajo Dracula X, Akumajo Dracula Nocturne in the Moonlight, or whatever it is, for Symphony of the Night. So you've got variations, but Akumajo Dracula is effectively Dracula's Castle, which is the name of the series. Okay. So this one, I mean, it should be easy to guess the series, but guessing the game could be a bit more difficult. So the next game is The Legend of Zelda, Triforce of the Gods. Ryan, any clues?
Legend of Zelda, Triforce of the Gods. Is that Link to the Past?
Okay. Steve, what do you think?
That is Link to the Past.
Matt?
Well, I wouldn't have known. I would have guessed Zelda 2. But I'm sure that Stephen and Ryan are right.
Yep, they are. Triforce of the Gods is A Link to the Past. Now, I apologise for this next one because I'm probably going to get the pronunciation wrong, which I probably should have just said in advance, to be honest. But the next one is Gekikami Ninja Den. Stephen, what do you think?
I have no idea.
Do you just want to guess a game?
Nope.
Gekikami Ninja Den.
Nope, I got nothing.
Matt?
Just a wild guess. I'm going to go with Ninja Gaiden.
Okay, Ryan?
I was also going to go with Ninja Gaiden.
You're all incorrect.
Oh, well, how about that?
It's TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So you
okay.
Close with ninja, but the wrong type of ninja. This next one should be a little bit easier. I Love Donald Duck. Georgia Unohihu. Perfect pronunciation, I'm sure. Mats.
It's got to be one of the Kingdom Hearts games. Kingdom Hearts 1.
Okay. Ryan?
I have no... So, I mean, I love Donald Duck. I would only assume, and only because you've talked about this game multiple times, that perhaps that would have been Quack Attack? Or Quackshot, I guess. Quack Attack was a series.
Quack Attack was actually the N64 game, I think. So there is actually a game called Quack Attack. Stephen, any ideas?
I don't know. DuckTales? I have no idea.
Okay, Ryan's correct. It's Quackshot.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it had to be a Donald Duck game, at least.
There's only so many Donald Duck games that I know about.
Yeah. Next one is a little bit more obscure. In the Wake of the Vampire. Stephen, any ideas?
The Wake of the Vampire. I got nothing. I can't think of anything.
Okay. Ryan?
I've got absolutely nothing unless it's that game that Castlevania was seemingly themed off of. And I can't remember the name of that game. But I think that was Japan only, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, Matt.
It's a very nice title, but I wouldn't have a clue what it translates to.
Okay, Matt, you are probably the one most likely to get this. It's Master of Darkness on the Master System.
Oh, right.
So it's a Castlevania rip-off.
That's a really good game, that is.
It is. Okay, next one should be a little easier. Dynamite Decker. Stephen.
Well, here it was called Die Hard Arcade. I'm not sure what the actual translation would be, but...
Well, yeah, this is just the Japanese name. It's not the translation. It's what it was called in Japan.
Okay.
So, Die Hard Arcade?
Yeah.
Ryan?
Oh, yeah, it's the Die Hard Arcade. We literally just talked about it.
Yeah, this one's a little bit
a couple minutes ago.
Yeah. Matt?
Yeah, Die Hard Arcade.
Fair enough. Yep, everyone's correct. Die Hard Arcade, of course it is.
I bet you're wishing that we didn't bring it up like a little while ago now, don't you?
Not necessarily, because it means you've now got a point, Matt, so... Well, it's not too bad. Right, the next one's a bit more difficult, because this one surprised me, because it's so different. Right, the name is Spintail, and I'll give you a clue, it was PS1 era. So PS1 and N64, I think. Matt, any clue?
Well, if you say it was something completely different, then it's...
Well, I mean, it does sort of fit. It's not completely different. It sort of fits, and you can see the connection, but the names are not connected.
And you say it was on the N64 and PS1?
I believe it was on the N64. Yeah, I'm sure it was on the N64 and PS1 for sure.
I don't know, because when you said Spintail, I thought maybe Crash Bandicoot because he spins, but that's not that's a PlayStation exclusive, so I don't know.
You're not far off the right track, to be honest. Ryan?
I don't know how I know this, but it's Gex.
Okay, Stephen?
I didn't have any idea, so...
Yep, Ryan's right. It's Gex. Enter the Gecko.
It was probably covered in some YouTube video I watched.
I'd say you're on the right lines with Crash Bandicoot because it's one of those mascot platformers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a weird name in Japan. Okay, next one is going to be a little bit tricky for Matt, I think, but we'll see. Rockman Dash. Any idea, Matt?
Rockman, those are the Mega Man games, aren't they?
I don't know, you tell me.
Dash? I don't know. Mega Man Base, whatever that one was called.
Mega Man Base, okay. Lion.
No, Mega Man and Bass was Rockman and Treble.
Rockman and Forte.
Oh, Rockman and Forte. Treble's his dog.
Yeah.
Rockman Dash. Is it that weird kart racer? Whatever they called that? I mean, I don't have a name, but basically I know there was a weird spin-off game where it was like a Mega Man kart racer. And that's all I got. I don't know what that game was called.
Mega Man Weird Kart Racer is your answer?
That's my answer. Maybe it'll be worth half a point if it's right.
Steven.
I'm gonna basically say the same thing as Ryan, just the Mega Man Racing or whatever it was called.
Yeah, I chose this one because Dash is quite misleading. It's Mega Man Legends.
Oh, really?
So it makes you think of dashing, running, racing, but yeah, it's just Mega Man Legends, Rockman Dash. Next one should be a little bit easier for Matt, so I'm going to choose him last. And I've also removed the number from the title, because it did contain a number which could make it a little bit easier. The name is Biohazard Last Escape. Stephen, would you like to hazard a guess? Would you like to biohazard a guess?
Ah.
I honestly... Wait. That's a Resident Evil game, isn't it?
I don't know, you tell me.
My guess is it's Resident Evil, I just don't have an idea of which one.
Do you want to Make a guess. Potluck.
I don't know. Code Veronica. I have no idea.
Okay. Ryan?
I do know that Biohazard is or the Resident Evil series in Japan. What was the name? It's a Biohazard what?
Last Escape.
I will go with Resident Evil Raccoon City, or Operation Raccoon City.
Okay. Matt?
Yeah, it's Resident Evil 3.
It's Resident Evil 3. Yep, correct. The name is Biohazard 3 Last Escape, which is why I didn't say the number. But yeah, presumably it's because it's Jill's escape from the city.
I thought it was kind of fun that Resident Evil 7 was Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. In Japan, it was Biohazard 7 Resident Evil.
Yeah, and the only reason I was even close to knowing was because of Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. The final one might be a bit tricky. I'll give you a clue. It's an N64 game, and it's a game I like. But the name in Japan is Star Twins. So I'll start with you, Ryan. Any idea?
I feel like I should know this.
You can probably guess it. If you know the game, you can piece it together from the name.
Star Twins. No, I've got nothing.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait. Is it Jetpack Gemini?
Jetpack Gemini is your answer?
I think so. I thought that was the N64.
Okay. Steve?
Jet Force Gemini.
Jet Force Gemini is your answer. And Matt?
I was going to guess Pilot Wings just because it's the only N64 game that I could remember at the time.
Was that an
Wings. Well, the answer is Jet Force Gemini.
And yeah, when Steven said Jet Force, I realized I screwed it up, which is funny because Jetpack is
another rare
game, so...
yes, obviously Star Twins because...
Gemini, yeah.
It's twins because they're twins. So there you go. So, Matt, you have 2 points. Well done.
Hey.
Thanks for coming. Steve, 3 points. And Ryan is the winner with 4 points. Good work. Your prize is absolutely nothing apart from the respect of your peers.
I'll take it.
Congratulations.
He wins every single one of these except the ones he runs.
No, I lost one of them.
Yeah, the one that you ran.
That's true. I'll tell you what, your prize is that you can do the next quiz, Ryan.
Hooray. I'm just really good with useless knowledge.
Yeah, well, not too great. I mean, it was only 4 out of 10.
Hey,
so
man, I did better than Steven.
Yeah, that ain't hard.
Only just.
Only just.
Yeah. Right, well, with that out of the way, that's ended our episode on Japanese exclusive titles. I hope you've enjoyed the new format. It's probably going to be a bit rough around the edges for these first couple of episodes while we get into the swing of things, but hopefully it'll work out a lot better in the long run. Well, hope you've enjoyed it, and all that's left to do is say goodbye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.